You have greatness within you. You are powerful. You are limitless. You are strong. You are courageous. You are love. Welcome to the Reconnect to Your Greatness podcast. Enjoy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you for another episode of Reconnect to Your Greatness. I am super excited to have with me today, Lesley Timbol. Lesley, thank you so much for joining the program. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You know, I came across you on RX Muscle with Dave Palumbo, and I thought, wow, this is absolutely incredible what Lesley is doing, and I really need to get her onto the program as well. So thank you for what you do for the bodybuilding community and really promoting mental health all the way around. Thank you. It's much needed.
Oh, thank you so much. It's nice to hear that feedback.
So for the listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with Dave Palumbo or kind of some of the bodybuilding scene, I'm going to read a little introduction here. So Lesley is a registered psychotherapist in Ontario, Canada. She's been in private practice for over 20 years. She's also a certified mental game coaching professional for athletes. And her expensive hobby, and for those of us that are in the bodybuilding and fitness world, we know what that means, is that of a competitive women's physique bodybuilder. And looks like you're getting prepped up for the Amateur Olympia.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a regional show October 1st. That'll be my warm-up show. And then, yeah, December 13th, I hit the stage at the Olympia. So I'm excited.
Nice. Awesome. So, you know, some of the listeners and the viewers have a sports background. Maybe some of them don't, but share with the listeners a little bit about what that goes like in, you know, mind, body, soul preparation to get ready for such a show.
You know what? It's a physical component for sure because of the training. It needs to be very regimented, such as with the eating. As bodybuilders, we tend to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours. It's important to get the nutrients in our bodies and to be able to really push as much weight as we can in a controlled way in the gym so we can build that lean muscle tissue. And then as we get closer to the show, we start stripping off the fat so we can get what we call conditioned, which means you can see the shape of the muscle as well as a lot more lines, and you get very tighter as far as crisper looking on stage. So someone can wear a bikini, yes, but wearing a bikini and being shredded is a very different story. So that's really tricky. So there's a big mental component of how do I do this day after day when it gets harder to push yourself in the gym because you have less food, because a lot of the times to strip away the fat, we cut down in calories. Now, I know some people have very fast metabolisms and they actually have a hard time putting on weight. That's not myself, Ryan, okay? I'm your traditional female, and there's some females that are blessed with great metabolisms and good for them. I really envy that. But I don't have that kind of metabolism. I have to go really low on my calories, and I do have a coach. So here's the other thing about the mental piece. Even with my experience, and I've done a lot of shows and all my training, I need a coach because when you have less carbs in your system, and I'm not talking about a day or two, we're talking about weeks and weeks, something happens to the brain up here.
Yeah.
And we can get into our heads, and it's nice to have someone to kind of ground us, especially the week leading up to the show. 7 days leading up to the show is called peak week. This is where a lot of changes happen. And this is also where the brain can play tricks on us. And we might, let's say, check out social media. We might check out our competition. They're looking amazing. That can influence us. Now, on a regular day, it may not influence you. But when your carbs are low, your brain isn't working the same way. And then sometimes people freak out. Sometimes people start to wing it during their peak week because they see their competitor doing something, their coach isn't having them doing something. I'll give you an example. They might see, oh, my competitor is doing 2 hours of cardio. I'm not doing 2 hours of cardio, so I got to do 2 hours of cardio. Not necessarily. If your coach didn't tell you to do 2 hours of cardio, there's probably a reason why.
Yeah.
So Yes. Oh, did you have ever heard of any stories like that yourself, Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I never competed, to step up on stage, but I would push my body to, get as lean as I could. And, I think that bodybuilding, Lesley, provides a unique perspective for people, whether it's with bodybuilding or even just like every day, like, hey, I'm going through a really stressful time in my life. I think that you can really share and add a lot of value to the listeners and to the viewers about, hey, how do I navigate that, right? Like, is it taking a step back from social media? Is it getting a coach? Is it, what does that look like for the average everyday person, Lesley?
So if you want to stay sane, it's a recipe. So the recipe means there's more than one ingredient. So definitely I recommend you have a coach, even the people who are in the pro level. So for athletes in bodybuilding, there's what we call amateurs. So I'm an amateur. You have to get to a certain status, and then you can get what we call a pro card and do you get your pro card and you become an IFBB pro. So even in the pros even if you're a coach, still would recommend you get a coach to be accountable to. So coach is one of the part of the recipe. Stepping back from social media, most definitely. Now, some people have sponsors, so they're obligated to put up certain number of posts. Right. What I tell athletes I work with that are under that kind of situation, I would say do your videos or your pictures, whatever that you're doing for the social media posts, whether it's whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be, make that and have somebody else post it. Because what happens is that when we post, then we look at the post and we look at everyone else's posts.
Yeah, go right in here.
So, yeah, for sure. So that's one way I would say to, you're filling your obligation to your sponsor, but you're not getting hooked in there. It's kind of like when people do a morning routine. Their morning routine for some people is to pick up their phone.
Right.
I tell people, do not pick up your phone. Like, unless let's say your job requires you to be on call.
Right.
Don't pick up your phone. Yeah. Get up, do a routine, get your food in, do whatever you need to do, prep your next meals, whatever you need to do, and then look at your phone. That should not be the first thing that you look at, because when you look at the phone or your email, this is the other thing.
Yes.
Check your email. Oh, I'm just going to spend like 1 minute on my email. Is it ever 1 minute, Ryan?
Never. Never. And it's usually something bad or stress provoking, right?
And that's how you start your day.
Right.
It's like, no, let's get some food into you first. But so the recipe, okay, so we've got the coach. We've got staying away from social media, or basically having someone else post on your behalf.
Right.
Someone like myself that can really tailor your specific struggles, because every athlete will go through a specific struggle, even if it's, let's say, I care too much about what other people think. Okay. Oh. That's a big one. Social approval. That's huge. And that's not just with athletes, Ryan. That's with basically every single person in this world. At some point in time, they're going to be struggling with, I care whether it's a parent figure, whether it's a colleague, like a work colleague, whether it's another family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a fellow competitor, whether it's your coach. We get in our heads, and it's about having someone to keep you sane for those kind of reasons, to give you that outside perspective. Because sometimes we think, other people must think that. Mm-hmm. Who said? Where's the logic to that? So I challenge people, because that's where the insecurities play in. It's these green little voices.
Right.
That's right. Like, we'll call them the boogeyman kind of thing, that get in our heads and tell us these things that are not true, but we believe them to be true. And there's a reason for that. And and what I do, because I have the mental game coaching, so I help the athletes to reach their peak performance, both from the, a strategy of, let's say they get injured. That's the classic example for a lot of athletes. I don't know many athletes that don't get injured to some degree at some point in time.
Sure.
And it's just saying, well, how do I get back in the game, especially if it's close to a show, or if it's close to a competition, or a game, like, whatever the sport might be. People can get in their heads and then they don't train the same. Right. So that's something I would help them with. On the mental health piece, life goes on, so you can compete. Guess what? A family member just died. Do you still compete? So that's another piece that I do. So there's different aspects, and it's important to have coaches that can help you with that. You'll have coaches to help you with if you need help with your training, as far as putting a program together to target your weaker areas and know how to train them properly to build them. Because what we want is balance. It's hard to have balance. So that's one coach. Another might be your eating. Now, some coaches will do more than one thing, but you can have a coach to help you with your eating and really help you dial it in, especially peak week. Peak week is so crucial. Another is a posing coach. I don't care what you bench. I don't care what you dead. I don't care, like deadlift. I don't care what you do. If you can't present yourself on stage, you may not place, or you may not place as well, and someone else is going to beat you.
Right.
So that's important. So it's having different people, professionals, tailored in their particular craft to help you bring the best package. When I'm talking about bodybuilding specifically, to do that. I mean, look at Tom Brady. You know, how many coaches did he have? He's like he's a GOAT. He's like the greatest of all time. So, you know, if someone that good hires that many coaches, what does that tell you?
Yeah. It tells us the average everyday person should have at least one person in their corner.
At least one.
Yeah.
At least one. Even if it's a life coach.
Right.
Even if it's a life coach. It doesn't mean that if someone isn't, and I'm not saying everyone has to become a bodybuilder. You know, I have 2 kids. If anything, I'll discourage them. But I don't have to even discourage them, because one of them is not into working out at all. And the other one does work out, but she has their head on straight. So it's kind of really, really wanted to, I would want to dive into it and kind of warn them of things, and I would want to supervise it so that they don't go down the wrong path, because there's a lot of dangers in bodybuilding. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of coaches that call themselves coaches, and they should not be coaches. Like if I got my IFBB Pro card, I would not call myself a coach as far as a prep coach. There are so many IFB pros I see online that will advertise themselves as coaches. They have no right. Yeah. They have no right. And taking one weekend workshop does not make you a coach.
Right. So what I hear you saying is even the elite level athletes, right, whether it's in bodybuilding or football or whatever sports, they've got at least one coach, if not multiple coaches, right? So how does that translate then, Lesley, in for the average everyday person? Like, you know, how can a life coach or, you know, a psychotherapist or a counselor like myself, how do we help people to reconnect to their greatness and kind of unplug some of those non-serving mental programs?
So basically, through upbringing is a big piece, you know, whether it's through, you know, as a child, what we watch through our parents, as an example, or the family environment is a big influencer in who we become.
Yeah.
And, you know, the choices we make, guess what? We make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And the problem is it's not the mistake itself that's the problem. It's that if people aren't able to process that mistake properly and make it a lesson learned, it becomes something that they repeat, maybe in a different way, but the theme repeats. As an example, someone, let's say, tends to go, let's say in a dating respect. So let's take sports out of this, just dating. They might choose the same kind of person over and over again because they're attracted to that kind of person. Whether it's, you know, they're the bad girl, bad boy kind of type, or whatever it might be. You know, some people like tattoos and motorcycles, and that's great. But there's a lifestyle. Now, not all people are going to end up, you know, in that kind of non-committal or whatever, if their experience is. But it's about learning what are the what I call them red flags, basically. So what are the warning signs if this relationship is not going well? Because a lot of times people stay in relationships too long. And to be able to say, what are the lessons learned? So if you come across that situation again, you can hightail it out of there. And a lot of times, because it's like we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, which is good, but sometimes we give people too many chances. And it's learning also to have something what I call self-respect versus other respect. And the and this can go again to athletes as well, but I'm just talking about the general population. When we respect ourselves, we're able to tolerate a certain amount. We can set boundaries. So a life coach will help people learn how to set boundaries. I'm not saying at the first mistake or the first, the first kind of, thing that someone does that irks you, you should get rid of them. No, because especially if you're just getting to know them. But if they keep doing the same mistake over and over again, despite you communicating, and this is another piece, sometimes people don't know how to communicate. In school, we learn English, we learn grammar, but we don't really learn how to communicate.
Oh, yes.
I would love to teach a course, and because I do in my practice, I see a lot of couples. I teach couples how to fight fair. Where's that in school?
Nowhere.
Ryan, I could go on a rant on our school system. It's not teaching kids the proper education. I understand they have certain things that they need to teach, but there's some practical skills that are not being taught in schools that really should be, that are going to help them in life. So a lot of times the stuff that's not taught in school, that's what a life coach will help you do, or a relationship therapist like myself. I also do individual counseling on a whole bunch of issues like depression, anxiety, grief and bereavement. And this is for like people who have died, as well as dogs and like any kind of animal who's died, because there are fur babies. Yeah. A lot of people, don't understand that, pets, if someone doesn't have a pet, they may not understand. They're like, it's just a dog, or it's just a cat, or it's just a gerbil, or it's just, whatever. No, it's not just.
Part of the family.
What's that?
It's part of the family.
It is. In fact, you probably get more love from your pet than you do maybe your teenage kids.
So let's unpack boundaries just a little bit, because in our work, that's something that a lot of people struggle with, right? Why are boundaries so hard to set, and how can we stand more firm in our boundaries? What's the key to that, if there is a key?
It's a lack of clarity on what you feel is important for you, and having that self-respect. So if you have self-respect, now sometimes people are like, well, I think I have self-respect. I want to set boundaries, but then people keep stepping over those boundaries. And it's about giving people the permission, because they feel like, oh, I don't want to be the bad guy, and ruffle feathers, or, maybe they say I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe I am. Go to a third party. You come if I have someone to say, Lesley, am I making too much out of this? Am I blowing this out of the water, or is this realistic? I will tell them. Right. But I'll tell them what they can do about it if they are blowing it out of proportion, or I'll say, no, you're not, because they're doing this, this, and this. But this is how you can come back with it. People don't have the tools. Again, because of upbringing, because of the lack of education, they need tools in order to enact those boundaries. So the theory of having a boundary is great, but people are not given the tools because of lack of education on how to execute, how to set those boundaries.
Yes, that is so good. That's so good. The tools. Okay. Obviously having a therapist, right, or having a counselor is one of those tools, right? Is there stuff that they can also do, kind of outside of the counseling room, outside of the life coaching room, right, where they can start to learn how to execute on some of those tools?
If they have, now some people are really good at inward analysis. Some actually do it to the point of paralysis. And what I mean by that is they get into their head so much that they can't get themselves out. So it's learning how to balance, and that's where the third party might be coming in, like a therapist. But for people who have that inward reflection and can do it properly by not going down what I call the rabbit hole, is being able to reflect, okay, where is my pattern of behavior where I don't feel respected, or I feel that people have crossed the boundary? Make a list of those. It could be the types of people, it could be the situations. Identify what we call your triggers. So that could be specific type of people, specific type of situations. It could be, so when you have that list of what your triggers are, I want you to practice the next time someone even remotely triggers you, because here's the thing, you don't want to use a new tool like necessarily in a crisis situation. You want to practice it so when you need it, it's almost automatic. So that's what we do. We learn through repetition. So it's doing these daily little rituals about, you know, questioning ourselves. So here's a perfect way of getting some exercise. Because we have something we do, which is called negative self-talk. So what I mean by that is we say negative messages sometimes to ourselves, and sometimes we don't even realize it. So as an example, let's say I'm walking down the street and I happen to trip, because let's say, you know, the pavement's not always straight. Sometimes it's a little bumpy, especially if there's construction, and you just trip. You didn't hurt yourself, you just trip and you say, oh God, I'm so stupid. Really? You're not stupid. You can say, hey, that was so silly, I can't believe I did that. There's a difference in our language and what we use ourselves. So I'd say catch yourself. Go take, like, rewind. How would you play that scenario again? So I tell people, it's kind of like, do you remember whiteout?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like a do-over. So I tell people, this is your permission to do a do-over. So even if those words like stupid come out of your mouth, get the whiteout mentally and say, okay, what's another way of saying that? And I would say, like, that was just silly. I can't believe I did that.
Wow, that is so good. First off, I haven't heard whiteout in so long, right? Because we live in such a digital world. But wow, Lesley, that is so good, right? Like, that's cognitive behavioral therapy in, you know, applicable, right? Whiteout. Grab the whiteout of the negative self-talk. Woo! That's so good.
And that's also, and if people resonate with the whiteout, I would say use that as what I call keywords. So, you know, it's getting used to taking a word that covers a big concept, such as basically giving yourself permission to do something over again. And if you have to have a picture of a whiteout, I know, or you can actually buy it in the store, to remind yourself every day, I'm giving myself permission as a reminder that I'm going to change my way of thinking. I can't do it automatically, so I need some practice to do it ahead of time. So whiteout, even if it's after the fact and I get it out of my mouth, I can do it again. Or let's say a choice, when you're saying what people can do at home. If you're choosing the wrong partner and you're in a dating world, okay, let's look at the patterns. I'm so old school, Ryan. Like, I'm school about certain things, like vinyl records. Do you remember vinyl records?
Yeah, yep.
So I believe that if people date, it should be one person at a time. I know that's like in the dinosaur ages, this multiple dating stuff, to me, it's a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't worked for some people, but I see more cons than pros. And, you know, yes, I understand you have to get yourself out there, and this is the way I understand that. So it's saying, okay, if that's the way you choose to meet people, and there's other ways to meet people other than online, believe it or not. But if that's your way of choosing people, what's the pattern why you're getting, whether it's not the response you want from people, or you're attracting the wrong kind of people? So it's looking at similar, what's the commonalities, write them down and say, okay, maybe I need to change my profile or what I'm looking for. Because when you do a little description of what you're looking for, you might need to tailor that a little bit. So, you know, it's being able to see, again, patterns, look at and examining those patterns and saying, maybe I need to change my pattern if I want a different result. So it could be my different way of, again, my profile picture or my description of what I'm looking for in a partner, or it could be, maybe I need to get off this dating app. Maybe whether it's trying a different dating app or trying a different way of dating. So for people watching saying, Lesley, if I can't do a dating app, how do I date people? The best way in the ideal world is organically. And what I mean by that is if you happen to meet somebody who has a similar interest. So as an example, if you are at home and you're a homebody, you're going to struggle with this. If you get out, let's say you join, and it doesn't even have to be a gym. So I want people to realize that, yes, I do, you know, I'm really big into the bodybuilding thing, but again, I'm not going to shove that down people's throats. I do think exercise is important, even if you take walks. Yeah. But, you know, for people who aren't into that and they're like, well, how do I date if I don't go to a gym? Well, even if you sign up for something, let's say are very artistic. Let's say you want to take an art class. So you sign up for something that meets, I don't know, every Saturday at 2:00. I'm just making this up. Well, by default, other people who've signed up for that course are going to be there on that day at that time. You could meet someone, you may not. But if let's say you meet someone, there's something called networking. So if you meet someone, they might know someone and they can hook you guys up. So that's what I mean, kind of organically. You're not necessarily going out specifically to the art class to hook up with someone per se.
Yeah.
Kind of a bonus. But that's how people, because you're not going to put an ad out saying friend wanted or like partner wanted, because you don't want those people who actually answer those ads. It's through common interests. So when you sign up and you try to do certain things, organically you'll meet more and more people, and then you might make a connection, or one of those people that you become friends with might be able to hook you up with somebody. Who knows?
Wow, I think we've covered just about every different topic of reconnecting to your greatness in one little snippet. We did bodybuilding, sports, the whiteout, and dating. We covered it all here. I love it. What I really ultimately hear you saying is be aware of your patterns, be aware of your thought patterns, be aware of your action patterns, be aware of the patterns of what you're receiving from other people, because they are a reflection of whatever you are putting out there.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think what prevents people from getting to their greatness is they don't forgive themselves. They keep harping on their mistakes. Oh, I screwed up this, and I focus on, like, anytime I see a client and I ask them, tell me your 5 worst traits, they have no problem at all coming up with 5. In fact, they come up with more than 5. If I say to you, what are your 5 best traits? Crickets.
Yeah.
It takes a while for them to even come up with something. So that kind of tells you where their mindset is. And sometimes it helps to have a realignment. It's kind of like our car. We have to get our car realigned sometimes.
Yeah.
Even it goes from point A to point B. We need it to be realigned, because at some point it's going to get wonky and something's going to happen down the line. Our mind needs that realignment sometimes too. And that's where a professional comes in. But, it's keep in mind, in order for you to progress, in order for you to get greatness, you have to fail. If you don't fail, that means you're not pushing yourself. So you might be taking the easy way out. To push yourself to greatness, you do need to go outside what we call our comfort zones, what we're used to doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, I understand, if you're, let's say, a nursing mother and you've got kids like all over the place, and let's say you're a single parent. You know what? The toughest job in the world, I think, is a single parent.
Amen.
There's a lot of tough jobs out there, but I think one of them is a single parent. Mother or father, single parent, I have to hats off, because your boss gives you no vacation. There's no such thing as a sick day when you're like, if you have a 2-year-old,
right,
having a meltdown, or they're sick too, so that's a tough job. So, I mean, to get to your greatness, you may not be able to do it in that moment, but to say, how do you stay, if you can't be in your moment of greatness now, what's a plan that can be put in place given your circumstances to help you achieve levels of greatness? Because sometimes people say point A, where I am now, point B, my level of greatness. Sometimes it's not a straight, like, they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Light progression is not necessarily a straight line. In fact, if anything,
really isn't ever a straight line.
I call it the cha-cha. You take
I like that.
Steps forward, steps back, steps forward, steps back. So it's learning how to, move your hips a little bit and go with it, not fight it. Because sometimes we say, hey, I took a few steps back. That means I regressed. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Sometimes we have to regress for our mind to catch up with things, take those lessons, and propel us forward to the next cha-cha step. So I tell people, try to be more patient. We are, by definition, human beings. Definition of human being is we're not perfect. But can we become better and achieve that greatness? Yes, we can. But it does require the right mindset. Not being perfect is okay. Welcoming mistakes as opportunities to grow. rather than mistakes. I don't like making mistakes. Well, no one likes making mistakes, but if you have to make a mistake, it's like that making lemonade out of lemons kind of thing. If we have to make a mistake, let's learn something from it. And if you can learn something from it, you're getting one step closer to your greatness. And if you're having trouble getting there, that's where having a professional really helps.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautifully wrapped up in here together. That was great, Lesley. So let's start to bring the plane in here for a landing. Let's say an individual, you're up in Canada, I'm here in the US. Let's say an individual that lives in Eastern Canada wants to work with you, or maybe a bodybuilder from the United States, or a single mother out there, whatever the case may be. How do they get in touch with you?
So they can usually send me a DM on my Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Lesley, LESLEYT_mental_iron. And they can also send me a text on my phone number, which is 416-805-6155. And I actually have clients literally from all over the world. So, we just got to coordinate time zones, and we're good to go. I offer phone counseling as well as Google Meet video sessions. So one day I will, by the way, move to the US, Ryan. I really want to move to the US. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, we may switch. So that's funny. But yeah, Lesley, I think just the tremendous amount of information that you shared today with the listeners and the viewers, and I want to thank you so much. I love how you're able to kind of tie this all in together. So best of luck to you for competition season. You're probably going to be starting your prep somewhat soon, and then be in the grind the rest of the year. So best of luck to you, and thank you again so very much for your time.
Thank you for those kind words and for having me on today, Ryan. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hello
so much,
to all of you out there. My
Take
name
care.
is
Bye
Ryan
for now.
Joseph Kopiar, and I want to invite you to come on this journey with me to learn more about healing and the holistic power of the mind-body connection. I think at the end of the day, we all want to live a happier, more joyful and fulfilled life. And my hope is that together on this journey, we can explore the mind-body connection and what it means to truly experience inner healing. So I want to thank you for joining me, and hopefully this will be an exciting journey that we can all take together.